It's the last one. It's Friday night. It's time for some energy. I think we need some energy in the room. Thank you. That's it. This is a novelty for me. Hosting a panel after 5 p.m. on a Friday, that's something I've never done before. Maybe even working after 5 p.m. on a Friday is something not many of us have done before, but here we are. Beer. No. Well, that's 40 minutes. Just wait 40 minutes. The glasses are coming out outside. You can hear the dance music starting. But this is the panel you want to be in, I tell you. Because it seems to me that everybody has been itching to talk about procurement all day. We've heard it. I can't talk about that. Because their panel was about something else. Our panelists are lucky because they can talk about procurement. This is the subject of the panel today. So I'd like to welcome them on stage. My next guests have no such restrictions. As we say in a UK game show, come on down. Pamela Kroster-Hartl, Managing Director of Zendis. Jutta Horstmann, co-CEO of Heinlein. Sebastian Reibler, Director of Appel, come on. Michel Cabosco, MEP. Thank you, Michel, for coming. And Mario Campolago, Invited Professor at University of Aveiro. Give them a big hand. Come on. Brilliant. So, like all the best managers, I want to make myself redundant. I kind of want to ask one or two questions, and then you just basically take it on and have a conversation. Really, we don't want it to be too scripted. I just want to ask the first question, really. Thibaut Kleiner was talking about the barriers to CEOs buying European open source software. He spoke about risk aversion, perception, familiarity. How can procurement change that? Why does procurement matter? Why do you care about procurement more than anything else? Who wants to take it first? Who's going to start first? Why does procurement matter? How does it change perceptions? How does it change behavior?
Well,
go on, don't jump in, be rude. Step over each other, come on.
Well, maybe I can just start because at Zendis, what we're looking at is to help the public administration to become more digitally sovereign. And in public administration, procurement is the central key. And when we hear about industry leaders being not really open to take risks, when you look at public servants, risk aversion is, I think, part of the DNA. At least
part of the job description.
Well, it's part of the job description. I mean, they are trained to avoid risks. And so it's a lot easier to actually buy what you've always bought and follow the routines you've established for like 20, 30 years by buying proprietary software and licenses. And it is a lot for them to change because it brings uncertainty. They need other competencies. And there's sometimes, or very often, we see a lack of knowledge. And so this lack of knowledge leads to people doing just the same as they've done for the last 20 to 30 years.
So do you think that's the biggest barrier?
It
is literally
is.
just changing your behavior, doing something you haven't done before.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, as I said, it's a question of how civil servants work. Their job is not to take risks. Their job is to ensure that a state functions. And very often they think the best way to make this happen is to stick to what they know. But we all know, I think, in this room, that in this very special situation, avoiding risks would be to go new ways.
I'm going to chat to just the guy beside me, Mario. You had senior roles at the Commission.
Don't say, because I feel already embarrassed, because my culture should be not to risk.
Yeah.
But
so how do you worked at the Commission, senior roles, how do you factor in risk and change of behavior into buying IT at scale?
It's interesting because working in the public sector, especially in the public administration, while we are certainly risk-averse, the fact that at the European level we have to push for interoperability at the European level opens up the mind. And I want to remember that despite all the difficulties that the public procurement, and in the case of the European Commission, the state aid, the competition, etc., may bring, I recall that when I was Director General there, we even launched the strategy 2020 that was Think Open precisely for that matter. Think Open was talking to ourselves, not talking to the others, okay?
And did it work?
Well, I left in 22, so I don't want, I don't want to make statements about what is going on now, but
Yeah.
I know that since we created the OSPO at that time, and since we use was completely open source to do legislative actions, since we have been particularly active in Drupal community, etc., what I see today, maybe pushed by the sovereignty concerns, is that the Commission is reacting, and you have seen here multiple statements. And this raises one thing that I guess that is also important, is that public administrations depend very much on political signs. And so this is the moment right now with the sovereignty, I don't know how to qualify it, with a challenge of sovereignty, and maybe in this panel we see if it is good to have a challenge on sovereignty by fear or if we should have it by design, but it doesn't matter. It brings an opportunity to see, is the open source part of the answer to the sovereignty question? And if yes, the procurement has to respond to that.
Jutta.
So I wouldn't necessarily see procurement as a barrier to like growth and innovation and such. Public procurement is there for a reason, and this is to avoid bribery. This is a part of our democracy. I think it is key that we have a defined process, but the situation now is that this process is, like it is currently, it is a barrier for sure. And both sides try to avoid it. The demand side on the public sector tries to avoid it, and the supply side, as the vendors, we try to avoid it.
What are the problems you see? What are the issues?
The thing is, it is taking too long. We are, with IT, we are in a field that is moving very quickly, that is acting agile, and the way public procurement is currently working is definitely the barrier there. But what we see in terms of, for example, the EU cloud sovereignty framework, working with very clear criteria that are measurable. Based on that, we can automate things. Based on that, we can make things way quicker. So I think we should think into that direction. How can we use that process and turn it into something useful?
Michelle Cabosco, what do you, we're hearing about a public procurement process that's slow and takes time. You're a legislator. What are you thinking?
I'm the one to blame.
No, not the one to blame. You're the guy that can fix it.
Always.
What's your fix? What are you thinking when you hear that?
Look, this is my first time in the European Parliament, and for this year and a half, what I've been doing, I've been working hard on the digital sovereignty, European digital sovereignty. Obviously, sovereignty is the word of the year, I would say, almost as popular as omnibus, if you like. Yes.
Omnibus is the decade word, not
the decade word. Yeah, the word of the century. I'm afraid so. But seriously, so we've been working on the report of the European Parliament on the European digital sovereignty. Finally, we had it adopted in Strasbourg at the last plenary, and this is good. Also, because the timing is crucial, and the timing is very timely, I would say, to discuss this, looking at what's happening geopolitically across the world. And I had this feeling, being part of the several discussions earlier this week, that this is like we are in the middle of the year already, but this is still the end of January.
I'm sorry it feels like that.
So many things happened and expected, and unfortunately unexpected as well. But coming back to the topic, yes, we do believe so, and this is why we put this in our report as well, that this is also about the public procurement, and so you need to create the market and amend the market to create the demand for the products, for the services. The price is still one of the key criteria, obviously, factors, but this cannot be the only or the main sustainable factor behind the decision making. So yes, you have to create the market, you have to change the rules, amend the rules, and to help European startups, European companies to compete more effectively. With the current state of the public procurement regulations across the member states, there's not a huge change that anything would really improve, anything would really change for better. So yes, that's our responsibility as lawmakers, who are always to blame, to make things go smoother, quicker, and understanding that you do not have to read Draghi report every morning, which obviously all of us do, basically, to understand how dependent we are. If Draghi says that we are dependent in 80% on non-European solutions, 80% means that we are dependent in almost 100%. So that's our responsibility to change the picture.
I didn't come from tech originally, but when I came into tech, I learned a great phrase, which is we have to eat our own dog food. So do you think that the EU needs to lead from the front? And it's such a big buyer of IT. And Mario, you talked about sending signals. Do you think the EU needs to send clear signals to the market? I mean, there's a few nodding heads. Whoever wants to take that, about buying open source, about taking a risk sometimes, taking a leap of faith sometimes?
Well, if you ask if we need to send a signal, we obviously have to. We have no other choice. The question is whether we will send a signal, because we were known for becoming, as we tend to say, a regulatory superpower of the universe, and we are amazing in regulating everything. Now is the time to deregulate and the time to help our own businesses. Finally, after or before it's too late for that.
But I'm not sure whether deregulation is the only way to go here, because you said that you want to enable also the SMEs to compete, but how should we compete as SMEs in a market that is completely dominated by the US players? So we need the regulation to make sure that we have a fair advantage.
Do you think it's realistic for something as big as the EU to buy IT from SMEs, for example? An open question?
Well, I mean, when I was in the Commission, and now I know that it's a practice, they use the dynamic purchasing system that supposedly opens the door to small and medium enterprises. Now, the question is, we should not just wait for a new procurement regulation, more simple, because it will not come easily. So let's see what we can do in the current models, be practical. I mean, the signal of sovereignty, that I like the word of the year, it makes that, yes, in current procurement you also put, and one of the quality is to have this criteria responding. This criteria is, say, a criteria for sovereign things. So there is practical ways of doing it. Now, what I saw when I moved from here to the member states is that, for example, dynamic procurement is not adopted, not even understood in a lot of the countries, because it comes basically from the Anglo-Saxon perspective, and all the Latin countries are not aware of that. So we have also to do practical things and not just waiting for the legislative to simplify. I remember all the work that we have done in the Commission on Procurement, innovation procurement, innovative procurement, simplified procurement, and then let alone that when we are in the legal process, the loser will always complain and will extend again some years. So we have to be very, very, very practical.
Sebastian.
In the beginning, you've been talking about the familiarity that's lacking, and I think it's just the message is very simple. Procurement is the largest lever that we have to increase that familiarity, to increase that buy-in and awareness into what possibilities we have with this technology and this business model that we have here. And Frank Feldmann has said before that this is an opportunity of becoming an active customer. It is the opportunity for the public procurers to take into their hands the improvement of the situation that we're currently facing and of increasing this digital sovereignty that we're trying to achieve.
How do we do that? So there's a lot of desire. How do we turn that into action? We've seen the cloud sovereignty framework come out. If you look at LinkedIn this week, you've seen a couple of companies and organizations bringing out assessment tools, sovereignty checkers. We seem to be moving to the practical. Is that enough? What needs to happen for somebody who's procuring IT in a large organization for it to be made as easy as possible, as you said, to change behavior? How do we make it as easy as possible for these people?
So I think the cloud sovereignty framework and now the application that you just mentioned, like SUSE provided this sovereignty checker, which is just awesome, because it really helps the demand side to get a grip on this huge ecosystem that they are looking at. Like what they are used to is interacting with a handful of US hyperscalers. And they know each other, and it is a very clear landscape. Now we want them to switch to a landscape that is totally fragmented and very large, and we want them to identify who are the players that we want to play with and want to continue. So we need to either have some sort of curation in between that we don't have and probably don't want to have.
What does that look like?
Or,
What does a curation look like? What is
yeah,
it?
it's some intermediate actor who says, this tool is good for you and this tool isn't. That's distorting the market. That is a problem. But instead, we now have the criteria that are really helpful, really valid, and they are measurable. They are like vendor agnostic. And this means that now each of us can put our application into that tool and check out, and in the end come out and say, okay, our tool has a sovereignty score on the EU Cloud Sovereignty Framework of 9.5.
But I'm going back to what you said at the beginning, Pamela. I think there's a lot of goodwill and desire, but I'm just imagining someone that's never done this before, sitting in an organization thinking, I really want to buy open source, but I've actually never done it. Do we need to send people in and to sit beside them and to do training modules? I mean, how do you get people educated and familiar to be able to procure? Because it's not their fault if they can't do it, maybe sometimes.
Well, I think it requires a lot of training. And as I said, we at Senders look at the public sector when it comes to digital sovereignty. And it requires training. And what we do in Germany, we have like model contracts for proprietary software. And we've had this and for cloud services, and we've had these model contracts for many, many years. And only recently, the government, together with industry players, drafted model agreements for open source purchases. They haven't been published yet, but that is a major step because it will give civil servants a lot of certainty when they actually want to buy open source software, not to make anything wrong in their contracts. Because, as I said, they lack familiarity.
How much is price still a factor?
Yeah, I was going to pick on
it?
that one, because the question is, in most of these public tenders, you just go by the price. And
how do you calculate that price on the long run?
That's the point. So there is this the short-sighted look on the price that is in the end of the offer is misleading because it doesn't consider, for example, interoperability. In Portugal, I look to some of the mayors and they struggle because every time they have a system and they want to put another system, the owner or the provider of the first system asks a fortune to make it interoperable with something else. Interoperability has to be a cost that is put there. I mean, auditability now with these questions about sovereignty, I mean, if you are not able to investigate, to see, to be able to see inside the black box, the sort of very integrated, if you talk about an hyperscaler, for example, very integrated box, but black in the sense that you don't know what is there, and there is, like we have seen, a lot of open source inside. And the control of the life cycle. I mean, we'll be confronted with the decision of a vendor, lock in, etc., not knowing what to do next. And ultimately, if you are really operating at European level and sometimes at local level, this is not so well perceived, but the independence vis-à-vis extraterritorial laws. For example, as in the case of the cloud, we may have the Cloud Act. So those are concerns that are not immediately visible in the traditional way of procuring and needs education also for the people that does it.
Sebastian.
I sympathize with the public procurers that are standing there and trying to make the right decision and make every penny count, because there is this huge public pressure to, in the face of tight budgets, to make every penny really worth it. And I think what also has been said in the panel before, open source cannot be cheaper. It may not be cheaper. It should not be cheaper, because it is actually the business model that you buy a technology and you get to keep it. And that is from the code base all the way to hosting. And that's why it should be at least the same price.
So if I'm playing devil's advocate, a lot of these non-price factors add to the price and increase the price. So we're asking Michel and legislators like him to pass legislation perhaps that increases the price of IT. Is that going to fly? I mean, do we have to send other signals, other ways of persuasion or education, or what's the answer?
Well, I thought at first that we were going to start this panel like back in the day with Steve Ballmer, who went on stage and he was like, developers, and this time it's procurement, because...
I'm very happy to watch you do that, Sebastian, don't worry. It's after 5 on a Friday.
Because I think this is the unique opportunity where we have been telling this story for decades as open source community. We've been trying to explain over and over again why open source is the more sustainable investment actually, and why open source is the thing that you should be doing. And now finally we're connecting with this digital sovereignty narrative, and the story works, and the people realize what they are buying and what they are getting with it, and these long-term sustainability factors is really what we should be looking at with procurement. The possibility of realizing broader policy goals, and that is increasing sovereignty and digital independence.
And we have been able to do so in the overall ecological sustainability area. We are able to put a price tag on our carbon footprint. So why not extend that to the digital space?
I'm thinking of things like organic food. You know, we persuaded people to spend a bit more on organic food.
As well.
But can I say something? Because today, in some moments, I got a bit... We talk about sovereignty. Sometimes the sovereignty is by European. Well, not all the software, open software, is European or needs to be. Neither all the open software is good. I mean, there was examples here about the maintenance. I mean, and depending on one person or whatever. So we have to have this clear. I mean, sovereignty is a good hook to push, but you cannot just link everything to sovereignty. Otherwise, we end up buying European, not necessarily open source. So there is these nuances that need to be taken into consideration, I think.
I liked recently hearing that some US hyperscalers are offering sovereign solutions in Europe. Yes, the American sovereignty in Europe. It sounds like a joke, but they are free to offer whatever they can, and they are welcome to the market. It's just that simply that it went a bit too far from our perspective. But if you are encouraging, sorry to say so, if you are encouraging me to promote the open source solutions as better because they are to be more expensive, I'm not sure that this is the very right way to do so.
No, I mean, at least the same price.
Well, I have nothing against the same price. It's just saying that, buy European, it's better because it's more expensive than what others are offering. I'm not sure, how many, not only lawmakers, but also people in the administration, regional, central, would really be happy to do so. But yes, it takes a lot of education, a lot of trainings, a lot of, better understanding where we are today. I like this idea, which was promoted by the Digital SME Association recently. So they published a broad list of European alternatives, and they initiated the label "Software Made in Europe." I like this label to be put on even on packages, on the products. Yes, we can do that. We have to do that. We have to let people better understand why it matters to promote our own products and services. Well, when people say buy European, well, we tend to think that in France, buy European means buy French. In Germany, by German, in Spain, and so on, and in my country, Poland, by Polish as well. Why not? That's not really the smartest way of treating this idea. Buy European means that we need to offer better chances, and we offer the demand on the market for our European products. They can come from any member states we like. They can come from the UK, which is part of Europe, as far as I know. So we can do that, and we have to do that. It's our responsibility. Nobody else, and exactly right now.
Well, I think buy European is not the central key to digital sovereignty, because the thing is, when you invest in proprietary technologies from Europe, and then there's some investor coming from the US buying this European proprietary technology, you end up having US proprietary technology. So buy European alone cannot be the key.
Jutta, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Pamela said, that sovereignty comes from being able to act, being able to change from one provider to the other, and being able to influence what is in the package and have the transparency to see what is in the package. And this can be achieved by code coming from the US or coming from wherever. So I think it's always important to make sure that people understand that open source is a global movement, and what we create together is a global effort. So I think it is the idea of Buy European is such a promising narrative, but it always, and I think it is not necessarily wrong to use that, but we need to raise the awareness that the code might be created like anywhere, and that sovereignty is definitely not the same as Buy European being able to have the choice and have the agency. That is sovereignty.
I'm glad that I pushed this argument, because it's exactly that. So what I don't want is to be locked in. So and then if there is open software that is produced elsewhere in the world and is integrated, and I have my communities that can see it, look at it, maintain it, see it from the security point of view, see it from all the points of view, that's okay, because we are not linked to one single provider, I mean. So it's very important to have these concepts around. But, and we come back to what Pamela says in the beginning about the culture, the question is, and sorry to be colloquial here, doing procurement like we do today is easygoing for a company or for a public administration. Entering into a process where you co-create the results with the community, where you generate code, you reuse code, you share code, you participate, is a much more complex thing and needs a lot of training, even from the school. And somebody said this today, I mean, that starting with Microsoft in the very beginning of the school is a mindset. I have been always in the telecom domain, and some of the today providers of telecom technology that are concerns for Europe, why they were so famous in the world, because they were offered to research networks in Latin America, etc., like offerings. And so the guy that is in the university, that learns one system, that practices its system, that knows the bugs, but knows also the beauty of it, will buy it when he goes to the commercial life. So we need really a cultural change in Europe, elsewhere as well, but in Europe if we want to achieve that.
And that is exactly why it needs to also cost the same. That is exactly why we need to shift the investments away from the proprietary vendors and away from the stuff that we've been trying to better over the last decades in digital policy, and it hasn't helped. If we try to bring up European champions, then the investments need to be at least the same, and even better if you get more from it with open source.
Right, we've got 9 minutes left, and I'm going to ask the same question to each of you to finish. If you could change one thing in the procurement legislation or common practice or just how people do it, what would you change? If you could wake up, you had your click your fingers like a fairy tale figure, what would you do? What's the one thing that you would change tomorrow?
Open source by default.
The four of us will talk to Michael for him to make this legislative change.
Yeah, exactly.
Really operational, okay? Take note,
live
please.
lobbying, live lobbying. Here we go.
No, we're asking open source by default at the latest in 10 years' time. Introduce a fixed number of open source procurement right now, make it 30% now, and you move it up gradually to 100% by 2035. And we're investing in Europe, and we're investing in the technology that we get to keep.
So is that 30% by default appearing on RFPs, or that actually when people declare their IT stacks, 30% has to be open source? I just want to clarify exactly what you mean by that. Is it give open source a chance, or actually tell people they have to use it?
No, public procurement is the largest part of IT budgets in total. And why don't we make those budgets support the technology that is actually sustainable for Europe?
Okay, very good. So that's number one. So 30% open source in 10 years. Okay, that's Sebastian's wish.
30% now, 100% in 10 years.
Oh, 100% in 10 years, 30% now. Wow.
But the point is the 10 years here. That is the magic that changes something about the overall market, because then people know in 10 years I have to change my business model and the way I work. So the 10 years. It is possible, and we have seen it with like the nuclear energy and the coal, and this works if you give a clear, measurable goal. And I will continue with my answer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sebastian might have stolen what you said.
No,
what's your one?
Because I wanted to build on that, speaking about measurable goals. I would love to see public procurement being way faster by building on measurable criteria.
Okay, so what criteria would you measure?
Like not the price anymore, but like using the framework, like the EU cloud sovereignty framework that has clear criteria defined. You can apply that, and then you say that's a proper product that I can procure, or I can't procure that.
So you maintain if you have clear criteria, it speeds up the public procurement process.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
And
Sebastian,
maybe we
you
need
wanna
to
come in on that?
introduce, I'm sorry, if I may add, maybe we need to introduce our own labels, because the label that you've mentioned, I think, is sovereignty washing, whereas if we have an open source label, then we can actually show what's sustainable.
Okay. You can come back to that, Michelle, if you want afterwards. Pamela, your one wish, you wake up tomorrow, you can click your fingers, what would you do?
Yeah, I would also include sovereignty criteria as a must into any public tender, as a real must criteria. So if you can't check the box, there's no way you're going to buy the solution.
So actually, you have to have the criteria, it's mandatory.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have to consider it, or you actually have to demonstrate?
Compulsory, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's very good. Mario, what would you do?
Let me just comment. I think the criteria are starting to emerge, so this is good. So they are not easy. They are not easy. We have to find the ways of doing that. But obviously, I'm very, very attached to the questions of interoperability, total cost of ownership, security, vulnerabilities, things like this. But allow me, my wish would be slightly a bit outside of the procurement, but comes from my whole life supporting research when I was in Connect and when I was in Portugal. And something that comes to my mind, procurement is okay, regulation is okay, but we are entering actually a phase in Europe that we are focused a lot on deployment. Millions and billions for AI, for gigafactories, for security, for this. So there is probably there an opportunity. And my wish then is, let's be courageous and say, if there is public money involved, the code should be public. And so, all this investment that is done, we have again so you cannot just pay the development of the thing, but we have to pay how to make license OSS licenses released by the research teams that may not know that. And in the light of so much investments that are going to be done in AI, where open source will be core. I mean, if we want to do vertical AI, if we want to support open source, large language models, etc., it's core. So let's push for, if it is done with public money, make it public.
Public money, public code. That's your one. Thank you very much. Very good. Yep, popular. Everything's very popular. So I think we're coming up with a blueprint here on stage at 5:25 on a Friday. This is impressive work. You've been writing down things very diligently, Michal. What's your
Well, it's an obligation of the legislation.
Very good. Duly noted.
Duly noted, yes, because all of your ideas were great. I love the idea of adding this to the criteria of public procurement, and needs to happen. I mean, combining the sovereignty, absolutely, with interoperability and security. And price, I would dream of the price to be at the end of the criteria, not at the beginning of the list. So that's our role. It will take time. We need to change the level of understanding of awareness among lots of decision makers, because we are talking about public procurement across Europe, but once we change it across the public administration, the private clients will follow. So that's the issue, that we need to set the tone, set the trend, starting from the public side. So there's no one magic point that would change the picture, but step by step, we have to do it. I believe so, and I'll be doing this also in my role.
Well done. Since the cocktails are being poured outside already, I think I'll give you 3 minutes back, as they say on Teams meetings. Or there are other European alternatives.
It shouldn't
Like
be
open
Teams
talk.
meetings.
That was a bit of a...
You have to think quickly.
Well done.
Thank you so much. That was good fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. And nobody fell asleep. Great job, Dominic.
Nobody fell
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.